Please come to the hospital right away. Sarah is in critical condition. I pleaded urgently over the phone, my voice shaking with fear for our 6-year-old daughter's life. But instead of rushing to our daughter's side, my husband's harsh words cut through the line like a knife. Stop with the lies and using our daughter's life as bait. You're the worst, he accused callously. I'm not lying. Please believe me, I cried out desperately, met only with a dismissive click of the tongue and his cold promise to have one more drink before considering coming back. By the time I get there, Sarah will probably be fine. Stop bothering me, he spat before hanging up abruptly. I crumpled against the hospital corridor wall, my strength failing as I whispered, Sarah. My name is Holly, and I'm 31 years old. 6 years ago, I married John, who was 42 at the time, after meeting him at work where he was my boss. His competence, fairness, and charm won me over, and after confessing my feelings, we began dating. A year later, he proposed, and I remember tears of joy streaming down my face. Shortly after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. We're going to be amazing parents, I remember saying, filled with genuine happiness at the prospect of building a family with the man I admired. But after our daughter Sarah was born, everything changed. John grew distant and began belittling me, dismissing my needs and accusing me of exaggerating when I was unwell or needed help around the house. Nights were the hardest. When Sarah cried, his impatience showed as he'd snap, "She's annoying, put her to sleep quickly." Many times, tears replaced the joy I had imagined for our family life. You're a stay-at-home mom, and you can't even manage the kids while doing your chores. Damn, I picked the wrong one. John's words cut through me sharply. Why would you say that? We're a couple. We're in this together, I protested. I'm out working hard all day. Don't burden me with housework. And your constant complaints about being sick or not getting enough sleep because of the kids. I don't buy it, he retorted coldly. I'm not lying about any of this. Besides, Sarah is our daughter. You need to be involved in raising her too, I pleaded, hoping to reach him. If you need help that badly, hire a housekeeper. That's if you can afford it, of course, he dismissed callously. His accusations stung, but what hurt more was his indifference towards our daughter. The thought of divorce crossed my mind, but as a stay-at-home mom, leaving with Sarah felt daunting. Still, I resolved to be the parent Sarah deserved, one who would protect her no matter what. If something ever happened, it seemed Sarah vaguely understood that her father, John, and I weren't getting along well. Despite this, she grew into a kind child, often gently stroking my head and saying, "Thanks for everything, Mom." Each time, I would lovingly hug Sarah and respond, "Mommy loves you so much, Sarah." But then, suddenly, something precious to me was taken away. It happened on Sarah's 6th birthday. The three of us had planned to celebrate together. I had been busy with preparations all morning and was nearly finished by 3 p.m. Just as I was about to leave to buy her birthday cake, I received a call from John. I got roped into a night out with my colleagues. "I'll be home," John's voice came through the phone. "Wait, today is Sarah's birthday. You promised you would be home," I pleaded. "Can't be helped. I was invited out. I'm quite popular, you know," John replied with a smug laugh. "Popular, my foot. They probably just want you to pick up the tab," I retorted, frustration creeping into my voice. I've told him countless times to stop footing the bill for his colleagues' nights out, but John never listens. He just says, "Who else is going to pay? I'm the boss." "Can't you please come home for Sarah? She's been looking forward to celebrating her birthday with you," I begged. "Stop nagging. I'll get her a present. That should be enough," John dismissed. "Fine, whatever," I snapped, cutting the call abruptly with a loud slam of the receiver. Relief washed over me momentarily. I shouldn't let this get to me. Today is all about Sarah. I have to keep smiling, I thought to myself as I walked into the local bakery and picked out a strawberry cake, Sarah's favorite. With the cake in hand, all that was left was to wait for Sarah to return home. But as the evening wore on and the sun started to set, Sarah still hadn't come home. I tried to reassure myself. Maybe she had lost track of time while playing with her friends. Just as I began to consider searching the neighborhood or calling the police, the phone rang. It was the police on the line. "Holly, there's been a traffic accident." "What about Sarah? Is Sarah okay?" "They've taken her to the hospital, but she's still unconscious. We're sorry for the delay in contacting you. It took some time to confirm her identity. I have to go to the hospital right away," the police officer informed me urgently. I regretted not leaving Sarah a note with my contact information, but dwelling on it wouldn't help now. Rushing to the hospital, my face drained of color, I silently prayed, "Please, God, let her be okay." At the hospital, a nurse broke the news to me. Sarah was in critical condition. The strength drained from my body, and I collapsed to the floor. Just this morning, she had been fine, going to school like any other day. This wasn't supposed to happen. I struggled to convince myself it was all a terrible dream. But the steady beeping of the machines monitoring my daughter's unconscious form brought me back to harsh reality. "I need to call John," I muttered, stepping out of the room to dial my husband's number. "What? It's you again. Don't bother me while I'm out drinking," John's voice slurred through the phone. "Sarah got in an accident and she's at the hospital. It could be serious. Get here now." John scoffed, dismissing it. "Yeah, right. Another one of your stories. You're just upset because I missed her birthday. Stop making things up." "I'm not lying. Please come to the hospital now. Sarah's in critical condition," I pleaded desperately. "Stop holding the grudge against me. You're being ridiculous," John retorted callously. "Please, just come. Sarah might not make it," I cried, tears streaming down my face. I found myself pleading through the tears, overwhelmed not just by sadness but by the disbelief that my husband could accuse me of lying and show no concern for our daughter in such a dire moment. Fine, I understand. I'll have one more drink, then I'll come back. By then, Sarah will have miraculously woken up and be peacefully asleep in bed. I'm tired of your lies. Don't call me again. Bye." "Wait," I shouted, but he had already hung up. In the hospital room, I sat, tears streaming down my face as I waited for Sarah to wake up. But she never did. Her birthday became the day she left us forever. "Why? Please open your eyes," I pleaded, my voice trembling with grief. No matter how much I called out to her, no matter how many times I touched Sarah's lifeless body, she never responded with a smile. Sarah was such a good girl. She was shy, but always caring and thoughtful towards others. A true angel. Why did she have to lose her life, Sarah? I collapsed in tears in the hospital room, oblivious to the people around me. In the end, my husband never showed up at the hospital that day. On the day of the funeral, the sky hung heavy with clouds, as if it too mourned. John's colleagues and bosses attended the service, faces familiar from earlier encounters, but this was not how I had imagined meeting them again. Throughout the day, my friends took turns consoling John and me, though approaching me was difficult in my weakened state. Each time someone spoke to John, he put on a dramatic show of tears, lamenting, "I can't believe Sarah's gone," and then shifting blame with, "If my wife had called me sooner that day, maybe I could have seen her while she was still alive. You're the one who accused me of lying and didn't bring me home. You're not even crying for real," I observed quietly, numb to any anger toward him. All I wanted was to bid Sarah a peaceful farewell with all my heart. As the funeral approached its conclusion, John leaned in and whispered to me, "All right, now it's time for us to get divorced. You'll finally be free." Taken aback by his sudden statement, I glared at him, biting my lip, but he quickly excused himself to smoke outside. Amidst the whirlpool of emotions as I continued to express gratitude to the attendees, a woman approached me. "Holly, my deepest condolences. I never imagined something like this would happen," said Kay, a colleague of John's and my closest friend from my office days. She came close and gently rubbed my shoulder. In that moment, I felt a slight sense of solace in my heart. 3 days after the funeral, I received a call from Kay. A few days later, we met at a cafe near my home. She was very concerned about me, asking if I was eating properly and sleeping enough. Her caring gesture meant the world to me. To be honest, I hate being the bearer of bad news, but on the day Holly had that accident, I was with John and some colleagues, and I saw when Scene picked up your call. "Is that so?" I replied, urging him to continue. "You should have pushed him harder to go to the hospital. I blame myself for not being more insistent." "You don't need to apologize, Kay. I know you encouraged him to go, and that means a lot." "Okay, I'm sorry." And I was hesitant to bring this up, but Kay also mentioned John's recent behavior. She suspects he might be having an affair with a young colleague named Lee at work. After everyone left that night, it seems he was alone with Lee. I hate to say it, but there have been rumors at the office about John and Lee. People think they might be having an affair. I see. The realization that I was the only one unaware of this, manipulated by John, filled me with anger. Okay, there's something I want to ask you. Yeah. You want to gather evidence of John's infidelity, right? I'll help. Okay. My longtime friend from my office days already knew what I needed. With Kay's support, I resolved to gather evidence of my husband's affair at work. A week later, Kate provided more details about John's affair. She revealed that John and his mistress openly flirted at work, often leaving together after hours and disappearing into a hotel district. Kay had followed them, capturing photos and videos of their encounters. Thank you for all of this, Kay, I said, struggling to hold back tears as I forced a smile at her words of concern. Holly, are you okay? If there's anything else I can do to help, just let me know. That night, I confronted my husband with signed divorce papers. Let's get a divorce, please, I told him firmly. Lucky me. I wanted to break up with you too, he replied callously. So, I'm asking for $30,000 in compensation from both of you. What? That's too much just for a divorce, he protested. You're all about money, John retorted defensively. I also know about your affair and I have solid proof. I showed him the photos and videos of him with Lee that Kay had captured. There was a brief moment of shock on his face before he regained his composure and glared at me. Very clever. You're quite the intimidating woman. Anyone can doctor photos these days. Which detective agency did you hire? He scoffed. I anticipated you'd say that. Just then, Kay walked in from the adjacent room. Concerned for my well-being, she insisted on staying close by and had been waiting there. My husband was visibly startled by her unexpected presence. These photos and videos are genuine. I took them myself, Kay affirmed firmly. You're the absolute worst. Our daughter has passed away, and you're cheating too. If you don't confess, I'll report it to our boss. Please don't do that. So, you admit to cheating then? Yeah, I guess, my husband admitted reluctantly, his face contorted with discomfort. All right, so we're getting divorced. Make sure you pay me alimony. Despite admitting to the affair, John still refused to pay alimony. If you're going to be this stubborn, I'll consult a lawyer. Do you, a housewife, even have the money to hire a lawyer? I've been working online all this time, saving up to support Sarah on my own in case we ever got divorced. I intended to use that money for her, but now I'll use it against you. Until now, John had looked down on me. Even when I confronted him with proof of his affair, he appeared unfazed. But suddenly, panic crept into his expression. Wait, hold on. This is some kind of joke, right? Huh? If you think this is a joke, try me. I won't settle for a half-hearted agreement, I stated coldly. At my firm words, John dropped to his knees, pleading desperately. I only started seeing Lee because she made advances towards me. It's not my fault, he began, offering excuses. I can't afford to pay alimony. Please reconsider. He bowed his head to the floor, tears streaming down his face. Yeah, and I'm sure those tears are just for show. Goodbye, I said, brushing off my husband as I grabbed the Boston bag I had packed and left home with Kay. Later, I hired a lawyer and successfully filed for divorce and damages. I managed to secure $25,000 in damages from Lee as well. John lost his family, his money, and was promptly dumped by Lee. Who said I'd only dated you because you had money? Lee retorted. I never expected things to end up like this, John lamented. And when our affair at the office was exposed, we were called in by the CEO, and as Kay told me, transferred to different rural areas. Following my divorce, I moved back to my parents' house and continued working from home. Sarah was laid to rest in our family cemetery back home. While I still mourned deeply, I resolved to live out my remaining years quietly and peacefully.
2 years after we got married, I still felt like we were just starting our journey together. It had been 2 years since we promised to be together forever, but my heart sank when my wife happily announced, I'm going to have a baby. The father was my boss. I remembered her saying, let's wait to have kids. I want us to enjoy being newlyweds when we first got married. My name's Ryan Kitchen, and I turned 30 this year. I married Susan 2 years ago after meeting her at work. Even though we worked in different parts of the company, I couldn't help but admire her beauty whenever we passed each other in the office or shared an elevator ride. When a coworker finally introduced us, my heart soared with joy. I'd always looked for chances to chat with Susan, and I wasn't going to miss this one. I watched all the movies and read the books she suggested. Slowly but surely, my efforts to get closer to her were paying off. At that time, it seemed Susan had a boyfriend, but I didn't pry too much into it. I was showing her that it didn't matter to me. Looking back, I'm amazed at how persistent I was. Susan decided to leave her job and become a stay-at-home wife, and I'm glad she's taking care of our home. She's taking cooking and flower arrangement classes, having relaxed lunches with friends, and enjoying a comfortable life. 2 years into our marriage, just when our parents started hinting about wanting grandchildren, something unbelievable happened. The busy overtime season was over, and I was feeling great, leaving work on time. Thinking that Susan might be feeling lonely because of my busy schedule, I decided to surprise her with her favorite cake on my way home for the upcoming long weekend. I thought we could go on a mini vacation together. I grabbed brochures of nearby tourist spots from a travel agency near the train station. To save her the trouble of cooking, I ordered takeout. I'm back. I managed to leave work early today, I told Susan as I took off my shoes at the front door. She hurried over from the hallway, looking surprised at my early return. While explaining about the takeout dinner, I handed her the cake she loves. However, something seemed wrong with Susan. "Susan, is everything all right?" I asked, handing her my suit jacket and noticing her small nod. Her expression was serious as we sat down in the living room. Susan took a seat across from me, and then she dropped a bombshell. "I'm pregnant, and I think we should end our marriage." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Susan and I hadn't had any children yet. She was the one who had initially wanted to wait before starting a family right after our wedding. I had agreed to wait, wanting to respect her wishes to enjoy our early married life. We had been careful for the past 2 years, so how could she be pregnant now? "I want a divorce for the sake of the child," she said, a phrase I never expected to hear from her in such circumstances. I had always imagined using those words joyfully together. Susan's expression was blank, but her decision to divorce seemed final. "Please sign these papers." "I want a divorce for our child," Susan said, laying out divorce papers already signed by her. Susan's parents had already signed the witness section of the divorce papers. She had talked to them beforehand. "I want to find out who the father is, but I can't lose my composure here. I have my dignity too," she explained. "So you're sure about this?" I asked, and Susan nodded firmly in response. After that, I struggled to keep the pen steady as I signed the papers. Susan neatly folded the divorce papers, indicating she had already packed her belongings. With a large suitcase in hand, she made her way to the door, leaving me speechless. I couldn't find the right words for Susan as she prepared to leave. She didn't look back at me. Her feelings for me were gone, evident from her expression. She disappeared into the fading light, dragging her suitcase behind her. All I could do was watch her leave. That night, I drank alone until I passed out. Waking up in the living room, I realized I had caught a cold. It wasn't just a hangover. I was plagued by headaches and chills. I called my workplace and said I needed a sick day to recover. Reflecting on last night, I wondered if it had all been a dream. But there sat the liquor bottle and the pen on the living room table, reminding me it wasn't a dream. Susan had really betrayed me and left. Reality hit me hard, and my chest ached with pain. It's true what they say, the harder they fall. I couldn't believe how much I now despised Susan, the woman I had once loved so deeply. Determined to find the other man, I spent the day searching through Susan's belongings. Despite my anger, I couldn't help but notice the ring and bracelet I had given her during our dating days still in the jewelry case. And then I found our wedding ring in the trash. What was she thinking when she threw it away? Just thinking about it made me feel sick. Despite spending the whole day looking for clues about the other man, I'd only succeeded in worsening my fever. Despite my efforts to keep busy, my health didn't fully recover in just one day. In the end, I ended up taking a week off from work to sort things out. When I finally returned, I was taken aback to find that my coworkers already knew about my divorce, even though I hadn't shared the news with them. "How are you holding up, Ryan? Seems like you're quite sensitive, getting sick over a divorce," remarked my direct boss, Tom Gary, with a smirk. Gary had always been a thorn in my side, constantly making things difficult for me with his pretentious attitude and questionable behavior. As I reluctantly tolerated his presence, it dawned on me that he had mentioned the divorce. Then it hit me. Before Susan and I got married, she and Gary used to work together in the same department. Didn't Susan inform you about the divorce? Or were you too busy nursing your fragile ego? He taunted, and suddenly everything clicked into place. Are you the father of Susan's baby? I asked through gritted teeth. Gary, with an air of superiority, confirmed it. That's correct, he replied, clearly enjoying my discomfort. In that moment, I didn't fully comprehend the gravity of my actions. When I regained consciousness, Gary lay sprawled across the room, surrounded by a toppled chair and scattered desk items. My fist throbbed with a dull pain, a testament to the altercation. The scene resembled a chaotic festival, with some people assisting Gary while others attempted to restrain me. Despite being struck, Gary found amusement in the situation, laughing at the trouble I had unwittingly invited. He had manipulated me into losing control. Gary happened to be the grandson of the company's founder, making matters worse. By punching him, I had assaulted a future executive. Predictably, I was suspended and ultimately terminated from my job. Now, I was not only unemployed but also abandoned by my wife. My life spiraled into disarray. Though I knew I needed to find work to survive, my actions lagged behind my thoughts. Daytime became an excuse to drink, and nightfall brought more of the same. It was a self-destructive cycle, devoid of motivation. The only solace was my savings, a result of past diligence. After about a month, an unexpected visitor appeared. Initially, I pretended not to be home, ignoring the doorbell. However, it persisted, ringing again after 30 minutes, prompting another round of feigned absence. An hour later, the doorbell chimed once more, aggravating my already frayed nerves. Irritated, I grumbled about the intrusion as I begrudgingly answered the door. Standing before me was a stranger, a woman of unfamiliar stature, her gaze piercing into me with a judgmental intensity. I felt a wave of discomfort wash over me, prompting me to shift my gaze away. "May I ask who you are?" I inquired tentatively. The woman, exuding an air of dignity and strength, wasted no time in getting to the point. "Are you the former spouse of that woman?" Her directness nearly caught me off guard, causing my heart to skip a beat. It was clear she was referring to Susan, and she didn't mince words. She introduced herself as Lillian Gary, confirming my suspicions about her relationship with Gary. The prying eyes of the neighborhood ladies passing by only added to my unease. I had always found their penchant for gossip unsettling. "Please come inside," I offered hastily, hoping to avoid further speculation. Lillian accepted the invitation graciously and stepped into the disarray of my home without hesitation. I hadn't made any effort to tidy up, but she didn't seem deterred. As we entered the cluttered living room, she silently began to gather the scattered debris. "I can handle that myself," I protested weakly, but she dismissed my objections. "We can't have a meaningful conversation amidst this chaos, can we? If you're not going to assist, please take a seat," she snapped, so I straightened up and settled onto the couch, watching in silence as she efficiently tidied up the room. "Why don't you freshen up?" she suggested. Her words caught me off guard, prompting me to hurry to the bathroom. I quickly washed my face, startled by the unfamiliar face staring back at me in the mirror. I shaved, washed, and combed my hair, feeling a semblance of normalcy return. For the first time in a while, I felt a bit more human. Returning to the living room, I found the cleaning already completed, with the trash bagged and placed in the hallway. "I used your kitchen," Lillian mentioned as she handed me a cup of tea. She seemed surprisingly capable for Gary's wife. "Thank you. I feel like myself again," I expressed, surprised by the sincerity of my gratitude. Lillian responded with a faint smile, though it quickly faded. "My husband asked for a divorce because he fathered a child," she stated bluntly, clearly not one to mince words. "I went through the same thing with my wife. I'm already divorced," I responded, indicating that it was no longer my concern. She let out a deep sigh, suggesting that Gary's indiscretions were nothing new to her. Apparently, he had previously settled a scandal involving Susan with money, leading her to immediately marry me as a sign of ending things with Gary. This time, Gary attempted to resolve matters with money again, but Susan refused to budge. From Lillian's tone, it was evident she still harbored feelings for Gary and desired to rid herself of Susan. "So, you want to reconcile with Gary instead of getting a divorce," I summarized, surprised that she could still have feelings for someone who had cheated on her twice with the same woman and had a child with her. Lillian appeared taken aback when I asked if she didn't want a divorce, as if the thought hadn't crossed her mind. "Do you believe it's possible to move forward from this?" I questioned, finding her expressions and demeanor intriguing. I awaited Lillian's response with anticipation. With a slight smile, she simply remarked, "We're still married after all." I'm not sure why, but her words left me feeling defeated. In the end, I asked Lillian to leave, agreeing to revisit the discussion another time. The day following Lily's visit, Gary paid me a visit. It appeared he had been informed by Lillian about her conversation with me the previous day. As a former superior, I'd ushered him into the living room. Gary glanced around the room and chuckled. "What's amusing?" I inquired. "Lillian's handiwork, isn't it?" Gary replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. I hadn't noticed, but it seemed Lillian's touch was evident in the tidiness of the room. The camaraderie between them grated on my nerves. When I questioned his reason for visiting, Gary disclosed that he had a favor to ask. He wanted me to persuade Lillian to divorce him. His request left me stunned. According to Gary, Lillian is unable to conceive, and he desires an heir. Susan's pregnancy presented a perfect opportunity for him. He offered me a bribe to persuade Lillian to agree to a divorce, placing a thick envelope on the table. The sight of him trying to resolve everything with money sickened me. "I want children, something Lillian can't provide," he stated, pushing my patience to its limit. I grabbed him by the collar, but he continued laughing, seemingly confident he wouldn't be struck again. Just as I prepared to swing my fist, a soft hand intercepted my raised arm. "Is my husband worth hitting?" Lillian's voice cut through the tension as she entered the room. "You left the front door wide open." "That's careless," she scolded me, causing me to release my grip on Gary. "Okay," I muttered, feeling the momentum drain from my confrontation. "So you desire a child?" Lillian murmured, her gaze fixed on Gary, who nodded in agreement. From her back, she produced divorce papers. "Are you satisfied now?" she asked, offering the papers to Gary with a stunningly beautiful yet unsettling smile. As Gary accepted the papers, his fingers brushed lightly against her hand, leaving me with a sense of intrusion. I quickly averted my gaze, feeling as though I had witnessed something private. "Thank you," Gary muttered before swiftly exiting. "We're enemies now, aren't we, Gary?" Lillian waved without turning back, indicating that he had accepted her declaration of war. Once Gary disappeared from view, Lillian turned her attention back to me. "Shall we nurse our wounds together?" "But first, let's seek our revenge," she proposed. We both decided to separately demand compensation from Gary and Susan. Knowing their wealth, we anticipated they would comply with our demands regardless of the amount. I instructed my lawyer to handle all proceedings simultaneously, driven by my desire to see them suffer even if just a little. This retaliation would be child's play, a small taste of payback. After making our demands, Susan finally appeared, tears streaming down her face. It seemed Gary would pay his share, but he refused to cover Susan's portion. While this was expected given their unmarried status, there seemed to be more to the situation. During a meeting involving the four of us, Gary attempted to shift blame onto me for Susan's infidelity, citing my busy work schedule as the cause of her loneliness. "You're quite the master of deception, aren't you? But your tricks won't work on me," I retorted. Lillian then produced a report from Gary's private investigation, commissioned by his parents. It revealed that Susan and Gary had been involved prior to my marriage to her, and Susan had accepted a settlement to end their relationship. However, their affair had continued clandestinely. Apparently, my marriage to Susan had been Gary's idea as a cover-up. My dedication to work and my somewhat insensitive nature made me an ideal husband for their purposes. Additionally, working alongside Gary provided them with a convenient means of monitoring me. The level of detail in the report compiled by Gary's parents, at significant expense, was astonishing. Lillian calmly read through the contents, causing Gary and Susan's faces to pale. Susan was the first to crack, her hysterical screams filling the room until they were cut short by tears. "Stop it now. It's not good for the baby if you stress yourself out." We reprimanded her, prompting Susan to flinch. Under the weight of Lillian's icy gaze, Susan fainted on the spot. Gary, in a panic, rushed to her side, cradling her in his arms. Lillian's smile hinted at her surrender. "That's a pity. I believe Lillian truly loves Gary. Love and hate are two sides of the same coin. The deeper the love, the deeper the hate," she mused. It seemed Gary understood this too. In the end, I played no part in the discussion, as Lillian dominated the conversation. As the meeting concluded, Lillian laughed at me, saying, "That's it." Afterwards, news of my divorce spread throughout the workplace, as I had disclosed it to my colleagues. Despite the company's attempts to keep it under wraps, it was too late. Gary found himself sidelined at work and estranged from his family. Susan, now remarried, struggled with issues involving her in-laws. Gary's parents, who favored Lillian, treated Susan poorly, having driven Lillian away. Once all the alimony and other matters were settled, I invited Lillian for coffee. She shared her current situation, working at a friend's company while living independently. "I can't have children, so I need to be self-sufficient," she explained. Seeing her speak with such sincerity eased my fears. "I don't agree with your reason for independence," I admitted, surprising both of us with my firmness. I noticed she still wore her wedding ring, a reminder of Gary. Summoning my courage, I expressed my feelings, asking her to wait until I found a job. "I hope to become your partner," I confessed. Lillian seemed taken aback at first, but then chuckled, acknowledging her complexity. "I know I can be difficult," she admitted. "I'm well aware," I replied, gently tracing the back of her hand with my finger. It seemed she was letting go of her past as she removed her ring. Then she lightly touched my hand, her affectionate gesture filling me with warmth. "I'll make you happy, so please wait," Lillian explained, her laughter brimming with joy. In that moment, I vowed to protect her smile forever. As the video concluded, I reflected on our journey together, eager for the future. What did you think? Subscribing to the channel will encourage us to produce more.